Hello, brethren and guests, and welcome to the District 8 Freemasons of Washington Roundtable discussion, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. It is important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Washington, our respective craft, or any concordant bodies. Greetings, brethren, and welcome back to the District 8 Roundtable. Tonight's discussion is going to be on technology and masonry and how it's changed with the necessity of working from home and staying at home and having no meetings, and how it's helped us through that and how it might help us in the future. I am your host tonight, so I will get started. All right, here we go. And so the technology and masonry. We've got video conferencing, whether it be Zoom or GoToMeeting or any other video presentation. And so what we need to talk about, I think, is we can use it for education, which we've been doing during the pandemic. Can we use it for stated meetings? Whether it be we open the lodge, then we turn on the Zoom meeting. We go and we do all of our business and everything that we need to do, education in our meeting, close the Zoom meeting, then close lodge. Is it possible to do the Zoom meeting before lodge opens, go through opening, go through the meeting, go through closing, and make sure that one of the charges that we have is that we're in a secure place for instruction. I think that that kind of puts the onus on the brothers to make sure that they are in a secure place for instruction. Or other meetings, meeting with candidates, meeting with new Masons, meeting with things like this, just all the different things that we can do with video conferencing, and how does that fit into Masonry? Video education, we have the Masonic discussions like we've been doing here in District 8. There's the six-step meetings. You've got somebody that's a candidate that is going through and you're having trouble getting people together at the same time. Can you do Zoom meeting? Can you do GoToMeeting? Can you do video conferencing to do your six-step program? Candidate advancement. Again, if you're in a secure place for instruction, what's the problem with a mentor getting together with a candidate and discussing the degree that they're on? So video stated meetings, if you do it correctly, they're all password protected. You have the availability of a waiting room, which is like having a virtual Tyler. Again, as I said before, we could do it before and after opening and closing, or we could do it after opening and before closing, but allow people that can't be there to join in on the meetings. Available to people outside of the area. In these meetings we've had, like tonight, we've got people from all over the place that have come to this meeting because they have that ability because of the virtual aspect of it. We've had brothers that have moved away that are in Florida. We've had brothers from Arizona. We've had brothers from Nevada. We've had brothers from Canada. We've had brothers from Mexico. There was a brother from, he was stationed over in Japan, and he actually joined one of the Zoom meetings. I wasn't in it, so I don't know which one it was, but that's the opportunity, the advantage that we have with technology. Again, other meetings, same kind of thing. Grandview. Grandview is another piece of technology that I think is way underutilized and hopefully will get more and more utilized as we move forward. You can keep track of all your own personal information in there, You can enter in your spouse's information. That way, when, God forbid something happens, we know who your widow is and we can contact your widow. That's one of the problems that we have in my lodge, is we don't have a lot of the information on the widows because we didn't have Grandview. And you can access it anywhere. So some of the discussion points that I had thought of were, what is a secure place for instruction? When a question comes up about the standard work, what is our first suggestion that we give to the brother? Call your deputy. So if you call your deputy because he's got the clear text and you ask your questions over a phone call, how is that different than doing a meeting on video conferencing? You don't know who's on the other end of the phone. You don't know who's around that other person on the phone. You don't know whether they're on speakerphone. So how is that different? And yet we tell people to do that. It's available to all members who aren't local. Then we've had questions about, what if a brother decides to attend virtually instead of in person because it's easier? There's some good and there's some bad to that. At least he's coming. I would rather he come to the lodge when it's available, but that's a discussion that I'm interested to hear others' thoughts. And of course, the one thing that we never really talk about, but it's also very important, that if you're going to have virtual meetings from your lodge, you're going to have internet connection in your lodge, and there's a lot of lodges that don't. So that's just just a real brief introduction to my thoughts on technology, where we're at today, what we could possibly do in the future. And so instead of a big long presentation, I just wanted to get that out, get the discussion going, and let's talk about it. What are some of your thoughts? Brian Thomas.
Steve, we had a Grand Lodge meeting. Clint Brown put it on for secretaries, but most of the Grand Lodge officers were there. And I asked the question, exactly what you said. Can we use in any way the Zoom or any other conferencing system to do one or two to do one of two things? One is practices for degree practices, and two is candidate preparation. The answer was, now the Grandmaster was not in attendance, but I think all of the other, I think Worshipful Woods was there, and certainly the others were there. And the answer was a resounding no, because for security purposes, and then secure place of for instruction. A place is a place. It isn't a virtual thing. It is a place, and so it was very definite. That was about 3 weeks ago, I believe. So the question has already been raised, and the answer given. I don't like the answer, but that was a pretty unanimous answer.
Okay. I don't know that I wasn't involved in that conversation. I've been involved in some conversations, and I know there's resistance to it, especially when we first started with the virtual meetings. But I believe we can get to a point where we can make it secure. We can't, we'll have to work on getting there, but I think we can. I don't think we should just not even attempt it. John Gebhardt.
Thank you, Steve. I guess the thing that occurs to me, we are talking about this now in the context of the pandemic. And certainly, this has imposed a whole new series of limitations on everybody. But I would maintain that the pandemic has simply just kind of been an exaggeration of a lot of the limitations that are already in place. Our training methods, our training culture is rooted in the Eisenhower administration. Back when there was a 9-to-5 workday, back when mom took care of the kids, back when traffic wasn't anywhere near as congested as it is right now, and back in the days before your workday didn't stop until your boss sends his last email. So we have schedule compression, we have schedule challenges that really make it impossible for us to become anywhere near as proficient in our ritual as our forebears were. So, the pandemic has maybe been a wake-up call to everybody, but this is not a pandemic issue. This is a way to connect that overcomes a lot of the barriers that we have in society today. And for that matter, speaks directly to how the new generation of Masons, we haven't even met these brothers yet, these candidates yet, but this is how they communicate. And if we don't communicate the way they communicate, then, I hope we enjoy each other's company for as long as we're around, because we're it. And I'd like to see some new faces here over the years. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Ross.
So I know that basically we were talking about our communications intra lodges, basically within the lodges itself, but I actually wanted to kind of talk about our communication methods in order to present ourselves to potential candidates that are out there right now, and the fact that we have been willful as an organization to reach out to this next generation that's really wanting to know what Masonry is about and see whether or not it's worth it. And I actually spoke with Right Worshipful Brother Ed during District 8 meeting earlier this year about what we should be doing in order to get communication in place to get these potential members to look at us and say whether or not it's worth it. And the thing is that we've been kind of focusing on the old technologies, the website, a little bit of Facebook here and there, but nothing really that's just been able to grab anybody's attention. We need to kind of look at the other methods that the 20-somethings are actually using, like Snapchat, like a variety of different methods. And I'm glad at least that the technology team is actually looking into that, because I noticed that they did put out a notice during the last notification from the Grant Secretary that they're looking for somebody who has some web experience that's able to probably get at least that communication out there. So I'm hoping for the best for the brethren.
And I think that the commercials that we have, that we're playing on TV, we're playing on the radio, I think those are a great thing. I really do. The problem with those is that they're pointed at guys like us that actually watch TV, that actually listen to the radio. Guys under 40 don't watch TV. They don't listen to the radio.
They're on Instagram.
Yeah. And
that's what we need to be.
Well, and the funny thing about it, as you talk about Facebook, well, to guys under 30, Facebook is old technology. They don't use Facebook. So yeah, we have to adjust with the times. John, I did see a few guys. I saw you had your hand raised, but I got a few guys before you. So Dan Taylor.
Well, thank you, Steve. I liked your presentation very much. I had two mainly questions for the group, I think. You mentioned the fact that at the outset of the meeting, Steve, you said you were recording the session, and which is commendable. But I think when we look at whether or not we're going to expand this to the broader aspects of doing, education, opening and closing lodges and things like that, what are the policies around recording and the security around that? Will anybody potentially could access that? That's question number one. The other one,
and let me answer that one real quick. I think that's a great question. And if we ever got to a point where we could do any kind of instruction or esoteric work or anything, we would have to make sure that, in my opinion, that's not recorded. That,
If
That
I
would
may,
be
Steve,
my-
I interject at least too with this, you are at least notified that this is being recorded. There is a moniker out there that you have to be aware of. And if I remember correctly, Steve, there's a very few number of people that can do it. It just has to be the owner of the meeting and whatever delegates they decide, right?
I would have to look at that. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that as the moderator, if somebody else is recording, I can see that and I can stop it.
Mhm.
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, the second question, again, Steve, back to your presentation, the aspect of the virtual Tyler, absolutely. Brings up the question of how would you purge the lodge if we were to open a lodge? I'm looking at all my brothers here, and I assume they're in a secure space, but how do I know, right? Everybody, Dale has a beautiful, the moon or the sun coming over the moon, and Brian has a taxi behind him. But, how do I know that eavesdroppers are not in the call we're in right now because of the space where we're conducting this business? Right now, not an issue, but if you were to have a tiled meeting, maybe there's a different protocol just to confirm that we're all secure.
And again, I think that's a great point, and that's, something that we would have to definitely discuss before we open it up. But I think that as the, let's say, the worshipful master, and it's your meeting, it's your responsibility to make sure that everybody that's on the screen is known. But then it's the brother that joins, it's his responsibility to make sure that he is in a secure place for instruction. It's his responsibility to make sure that there's nobody around him. Can we be 100% certain? Probably not, but I can tell you that I'm never 100% certain at my lodge that somebody didn't come in the side door and is standing by the back door listening in.
Good point, Steve. It might be as simple as we may, we use the short form of opening sometimes, but then we might need to have the senior deacon, junior deacons, when they're doing the purge or they're collecting the password, to just confirm. Maybe it's another question. Say, are you in a secure space?
Yeah, I didn't think about the word, collecting the word. How would you do that? That's
It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Do it via chat.
Andre.
Yeah.
Whoop.
Am I off mute now?
Yep. There you go.
There we go. Okay, so you can take it. You can do it in chat. You can chat to one person individually. So the host could say, each person give me the chat or the password. You could get it from every person at the same time and go through them and check them and make sure everybody's got the password. There are many, many ways to alleviate these issues that are coming up. It's a new technology. We have to learn to adapt to that new technology and fit it to what we need to have done. But to suggest that this medium is not as secure as a lodge room, I disagree vehemently. I think this medium can be made much more secure than the lodge room. I mean, even now we have lodges that have virtual Tylers. And there's not even a Tyler out there. There can be anybody in the ante room listening to your meeting going on. Recording devices can be brought in. I mean, there's thousands of ways things can get out. It's been repeatedly told to me that the essential things that are to be kept secret are the modes of recognition. Almost everything else is open. When I hold a seminar for sacred geometry or I hold an esoteric subject, anybody can come in and listen to that. It's common knowledge. All we're doing is expounding on the knowledge. The things that are secret are our internal things within the lodge, our modes of recognitions, our passwords. Those things are the secrets. So to say that we can't let them come in and hear what we're talking about, I don't see anything that we're talking about here that it would be secret. And to have a recording, even if it is about an esoteric topic or something that does contain something reference to Masonic modes of recognition, those recordings do not have to be put out on public domain. You can keep those recordings for request only by certain members. They can be administered just like a library of text, like the clear text. Clear text is given out to all the district deputies. They check it out, they sign it out, they get it, they put it back. Same thing can be done with recordings of meetings and things about topics that we want to keep secret. I just really think that we need to get out of this mode of saying, oh, this is something that has some new holes in it. We have to learn to deal with those holes, how to plug them and how to keep them up to date. That's all. But this is going to be the medium of the future. Either this generation is going to do it, and believe me, I'm a guy coming who grew up in technology, not knowing anything about it, being from baby boomer generation, and has been working into it throughout my entire life. And I see it as the mode of the future. Either we're going to do it, or the next generation is going to do it, or the generation after that. But eventually, this is going to become a prime medium of communication for Masonry as well as everything else. And that's all I got to say about that.
And I like what you say, Andre. I think, you know, and I think that it's also important, though, to note that this is not something that I would envision we'd flip a switch and we would do it tomorrow. It's something that we're going to have to discuss. We're going to have to figure out different ways to do the past, different ways to do, you know, things like that if we ever decide to go there. But I think it's definitely worth talking about. Just quick note. So I've got Bob, then Michael, then John Lawson, then John Gebhardt, then Ken Shotwell, then Jim Hamlin. Just so you know, I've got everybody in order here. So Bob. Did we lose Bob?
Oh, I'm right here. I'm right here.
Oh,
I just had to turn off the microphone. Thank you. You know, I think Steve, I think there are pros and cons. You said that earlier when you started, and you know, one of the cons of it is, you know, Rotary tried this a couple of years ago with their 100%. You know, they have to be at 100% attendance, and so they did a virtual thing too. And then folks started utilizing that to sign in rather than come to the meeting. So there is a downside to it. There's no doubt about that. That would have to be considered in whatever we do, because people, hey, I'm busy, I'll just sign into this and I won't be going tonight. So that would have to be something to look at. But there's so many positives. I know we were having a roundtable, yes, at Tuesday, and Most Worshipful Grandmaster attended our meeting, some others. But you know, the thing that we mentioned this in briefing, but one of the things that was mentioned during that meeting is during our recent competitions. Folks that were downstairs in the lodge where it was going on were able to hear what the actual degree was, so they knew before they went in there. So it isn't totally locked down. But we at our lodge obviously are always struggling to get folks in, and I've got a couple of young men, one in particular right now that we haven't been able to get through the first degree, and he's very connected, but he's very, very busy. And during this whole time of this pandemic, it would have been nice to be able to reach out to him and work on his first degree, and so that when ready to go back to meetings, we could have done something. I don't know that we can, you know, take a bite of the whole apple, you know, but we can take a bite of that apple. Yeah. And I do agree with the issue of security. I do think that these systems, you know, nothing is perfect. Telephone calls aren't perfect. I mean, I was a hostage negotiator for years. I tapped into all sorts of phones when I had to talk to a suspect in a house. It was very easy. It's 2 wires and you hook up. But I mean, that's not going to happen a lot, right? And I don't think it's going to happen a lot that you're going to have people trying to get into our meetings as well. And we all know you can go on the internet and you can find anything about our secrets that you want to find. They're all there. You've got lodges that even put them up there. At least somebody did. Maybe they're disgruntled folks. I don't know. But we know that that's there. And I think that we still have a responsibility. I mean, obviously in our first degree, we give an oath that we're not going to reveal this, you know, through writings and other things. But I do think that there has to be at some point, if we really want to move forward with Masonry, we've got to think about these young men. And we have to think about what they're doing and where they're coming from and how they're learning and the things that they want to do to move forward and their time commitments and what they feel is important. We see it in work all the time. It used to be, hey, when I was a cop, I loved to work and family came second. That's not how it works anymore. You know, it's not that way. You know, if my family is the first thing and I've got time, I don't care about your overtime, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the same thing goes for meetings. you know, I'm busy. My wife isn't going to understand, or my spouse isn't going to understand that I have to be out tonight. I was out last 3 nights, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that we're just in a different time. And in order to move forward, we have got to start looking at some of this. And like I say, I don't think we can just take the whole thing, because I think there are just too many folks, you know, we're bound in tradition. It'd be a very, very hard argument, but we have to start pecking away at it, because I think it is the part of the future. And if we don't grasp it at some point, I think we're going to lose, just like Polaroid and some others. We have to be thinking forward. And this is part of it. And I think, and we've done that. We've done that with other things in Masonry. And I think this is just one more thing that we should probably be giving some consideration. Maybe a committee at some point at the Grand Lodge level has to be formed to really talk about this, and talk about the pluses and talk about the minuses, and bring them all out on the table. But I think this is a great discussion. And I think that even so far from what I've heard, you know, I think there's, again, some folks have made some comments that there's some positive sides, there are some negative sides. But until we get it all out on the table and say, what can we do? We're not going to move forward, and we are going to lose people. And I guarantee you, with this pandemic we have, I will be very lucky to get that one man back into our lodge, because frankly, we can invite him to our roundtables, but he's not getting any light in Masonry.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And I think it is huge that we start thinking about that, even if it's just opening up, saying, you know what, you can get into a one-on-one conversation and make sure it's secure, and let's go over the first degree, so that when we're ready to reopen, we're ready to give you that degree. That would have kept him interested in going. But I can't go to his house. He's got kids. I'm his mentor. I can't go there. He's got kids. I've got the issues that you can't go out, right? So if that's true, that's where we're at. So that's all I had. Just thought I'd say that much.
Well, and I think that although I agree with the argument, I think it's getting to the point that I don't think we should use it anymore, is oh, well, it's all on the internet anyway. You know, I think people are getting tired of hearing that. And to me, that's like, you know, when you're going to buy something and they say, well, all you got to do is, you know, that's a cup of coffee a week or a cup of coffee a day. It's like, yeah, well, I'm not going to give up my cup of coffee a day, so I got to find the money somewhere else. So
I think the point is there, though, is that the fact is we can do things to secure this better. And if we want to worry about the fact that, you know, anything that we have in our ritual is going to get out, it's out there. So I'm not saying that's a good thing, Steve, but I'm saying if we're going to say, hey, we can't do this because it's not secure enough, I don't think that can hold full water, because it is out there. But we still have a responsibility to our craft to maintain those traditions, not to release that information. I mean, we took an oath not to do it, so we should not do it. I'm just saying it is out there. And so if we're trying to get more, build our base, you know, we should be able to say, well, we have a secure way of doing it. We're still holding to the tenets of Masonry and to the oaths that we took, because we do that. All I'm saying is we can't say, well, they might get this secret or they might get that secret, because those secrets are out there. My point is, to me, the greater thing is, I took an oath not to release those secrets. Yes, they're out there, but whatever we do, let's make sure that we maintain a good, secure process. Not say, well, let's just open this up for anybody. No, we have to follow certain things. So that's my point there.
Okay, Bob, that's point taken. Michael Burton.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Brother Bob, very well said. You literally took most of the words out of my mouth.
And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Damn unsanitary too.
I think what the situation is showing to us, and it's especially to us Freemasons, it's presenting us with an opportunity to do what it is that we've been looking to do for quite some time. Before this pandemic started, we were in discussions on how it is that we can start getting more in touch with the younger generation. And this pandemic is presenting that opportunity to us. I think first and foremost, it's something that we as Masons need to actually start really putting some serious effort into this virtual idea, because it is the future. And we are full with intelligent men, very, very highly intelligent men from all sorts of professions, across this landscape. And if anyone is able to do it, a Freemason should be able to do it. I think there's, excuse me for lack of a better word, but some of our older, Larry Foley, some of our older brethren, what worked for them as Freemasons 30, 40, 50 years ago isn't necessarily working for today's Mason. And so we have to evolve with the times. Actually, we have to do more than evolve. We have to be ahead of the times. And where we're at right now is we're behind. And it shows in our decreasing numbers with smaller lodges. And bigger lodges in bigger cities aren't necessarily facing these huge declines. Yes, maybe some, but we got a lot of lodges in my area that are close to folding. I think with virtual meetings, we just have to get with a secure connection. And what Brother Bob was saying is that with our secrets, our secrets are already out there. And plus, our secrets are fruitful. Our secrets are good. And hey, I'm not saying I'm going to go out there and start spilling secrets, but if someone overheard me telling a secret or sharing a secret and it turned their life around and made their life better, it's a small price to pay. I think it's time for Masonry to evolve to the next level that's going to keep us around for even more centuries. And I think we can do that by setting guidelines for virtual meetings, being sure that we're not inviting someone that could possibly be compromised. We try not to allow compromised individuals into our fraternity, but since we're moving into something totally new and also so important for our craft, we have to find a new way to screen. We have to do it differently and still maintain the deeper part of our secrets. I think we're looking at a great opportunity. We just need the individuals to put their hands up and say, hey, look, I'm willing to look into this. It's someone, let's start looking into and start writing it down. Let's have some practice sessions or something like that. But I think it's important. That's all I got. Brother Bob said most of what I wanted to say. Not everything, but yeah, absolutely. That's all I got.
And I do truly believe that we are turning the corner. I think that the momentum is going that direction. Whether or not it's fruitful in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. But from what I've seen, I feel like, and this is an example, things like this, I think we're turning the corner. I think we're headed for a better place. I hope.
And absolutely,
I'm an optimist.
I'm a true optimist myself, and I absolutely agree. It is going to happen. We don't want to wait until there's only 1 million Masons left, or we don't want to wait till our numbers get so small to start doing something. It's going to happen. It's in the cards. It's supposed to happen, and we're seeing the manifestation of Masonry actually growing.
John Lawson. Oh, wait a second. Can you unmute yourself?
There we go. I got it.
There you go.
Yeah, Mike Burton, I just want to say that, it will happen because our cause is just. You see what I just did there? we know how to talk to each other. We know the words to say. They're meaningless to people outside of us, but we know what they mean. Mouth to ear, we're taught. We have a cipher that is a memory cipher that helps us to learn to do it that way. And when we do, we have a language that we can speak with exclusivity to one another. that even if somebody were to come in on our group, they wouldn't know what we're talking about, wouldn't know what we're saying. I do think we need to be extremely careful about what we say. However, the thrust of what we're saying is more philosophical, and those are the things that, in my opinion, in the last 10, 15 years of my observations, we have not been doing very well. We teach people where to stand, what to say, what to wear, and how to behave, but we do not teach them why they are doing it. And then turning that into a practical application of how, in fact, is this actually improving my life. The lodge is a very important place to learn all of those things from a traditional standpoint, from a landmark standpoint, from a history standpoint, and I think we need that very much. There's no one simple answer. It's a multiplicity it's a suite of products that we need to have, but most 20, 30, even up to 40-year-olds, they want to know why Masonry is going to make a difference in their life, how it's going to change them, how it's going to make their life better, how are they actually going to become a better man. If we can't explain that to them, then they're going to come, sniff around, and then they're gone. And to me, this medium right here, electronically, is the answer to so much of that. Because during the lodge, we don't have often these kind of conversations. So we need both. You need both. They need the experience of the one-on-one. They need the experience of the lodge room. They need to be able to move within the lodge room because that's part of the ritual as well. But we need conversation at a deeper level, and that can easily be accommodated in a Zoom meeting. One of the things that I do on Monday nights, because we saw this problem a year or more ago, and I said to myself, what can we do? I started having those young men who were interested in Masonry come to my house. They have a cup of coffee, they could have a beer. They sat down around my table. What started as maybe 3 or 4 people has turned into a dozen people. Maybe I've had as many as 15 people here, some of which are Masons, some of which are entered apprentices, some of which are not yet petitioned. So we take care of the 6-step program. We take care of the entered apprentices. They all know each other. They all exchange emails. They all exchange text messages. I will start a thread of text messages and I'll say, have you seen this YouTube? Have you watched this video? And they're of all different types of good, like our, not just a man, a Mason, those kinds of things, and send those out to them. Almost every day, there is a continuous thread of technology that's going on text. One of the things I do at work is dealing with lots and lots of wide variety of employees. And as a principal communication specialist, one of the things I have to deal with is how do I motivate a 60-year-old compared to a 20-year-old? And you don't motivate them in the same way, clearly. So how do I send out a directive that has to talk to everyone? So one of the things we do is we use a variety of things. We don't just use Facebook, we use Instagram. We don't just use Instagram. We use LinkedIn. We don't just use LinkedIn. We use, on and on it goes. So it's important to learn. We have to educate ourselves on what actually does work. And there are lots of statistics out there that can be very helpful to Masonry if we would just look at them. Things like the fact that a millennial will answer a text message within 15 seconds on average, about 80 or 90% of the time. Now, if we're sending an email or snail mail, or we're just posting something on the web, they're not going to get that information. They're not going to pay any attention to that. We have to go in the way that they go. And if that's how they communicate, and clearly it is, then those are the things we have to use. Zoom is great. I think that technology is great, but we miss some of the things like text messaging. text messaging is still clearly the most powerful communication tool for a millennial. And we should be using that. We can
Well,
put it.
And John, I talked about Grandview.
Right,
You know,
exactly.
in Grandview, if you put cell phones in Grandview, you can put in your profile that you receive text messages, and then guys from your lodge, they can send a group text message to everybody in your lodge that has a cell phone.
Exactly right. One last thing I'll just say, I set that text thread up. We've added people to it. And I know you're going to just say, John, you're crazy, but I swear to you, it's as a surprise to me as it will sound to you. I have had threads that have continued for almost a year on text messaging of same conversations.
Yeah.
And these people, guess what? They become friends. They integrate with each other. Now that's using technology when practicality, location is not possible. So that's my 2 cents. There are ways of using it. I think we have to use a multiplicity of ways. There is no one answer. It is a suite of answers, but we've got to embrace that, or we're going to lose an entire generation. We've actually, not to sound doom and gloom, but we've got just really one shot at really retrieving masonry from a free fall. And we can do this. And I think we will do this because, again, going back to Michael, you know, our cause is just. We can prevail. We will prevail. So that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thanks, John. So, you know, one of the things that I've talked about before with communication and technology, we have so many ways to communicate now that we're horrible at communicating. Because you've got text messages, you've got Facebook messages, you've got phone calls, you've got email, and it's hard for guys like me to reach out on all those different mediums to try to get a hold of people. That doesn't mean we can't do it. That doesn't mean we shouldn't do it, but it's more difficult to communicate because everybody has a different form of communication. So I've got John Gebhardt, then I got Jim Hamlin, then I got Duncan. So John Gebhardt.
Thank you, Steve. You know, we have a very wonderful brother in Mercer Island, Dean Quigley. Many of you probably know Dean. I think almost everybody knows Dean. He's 96 years old, and he's been a Mason for about 75 years. And we often have discussions about how to improve things, how to operate things. And at some point, Dean will stand up. It takes him a while because he's 96. And he says, you know, it used to be Thursday night was Mason's night. And, you know, we would all get together every Thursday night. And sometimes we'd have a stated meeting, and sometimes we'd practice, and sometimes we'd do flute work. And Mom knew, and the kids knew. And I listened to him, and I giggle, and I say, Dean, I was born too late. That sounds awesome. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Now, we've talked about a lot of things tonight. And, you know, there's a whole range of things that, you know, someone is going to have to digest to figure out what the acceptable practices are. That's elephant for lunch. I don't have 3 years. You said earlier 3 years, then you said 10, and you almost lost me. 3 years. I want 3 weeks. And I want one thing. I want ritual training via web conferencing. And I'll tell you why. We don't have Thursday night every month, every Thursday Mason's night. We have one stated meeting a month. And you know what? It's a poor meeting. Maybe in the middle, when we start talking about, you know, some, you know, maybe more substantive issues, it turns out to be a good meeting when we shrink the lodge. But the ritual is really poor. We do not practice, we do not understand the reason we do the ritual. We do not put ourselves in that sacred retreat of friendship and virtue. It takes one of the principal officers, just one, to totally screw up the opening. And out of my 7 lodges, I can name 6 that do it routinely. And the reason is we don't practice. If we had a chance to practice, if we had the means to spend 1 hour and get 1 hour of practice, it would change everything. And it would start to develop the understanding we've talked about tonight. It would be a conversation as opposed to this, you know, robotic recital. I mean, frankly, I could probably buy a couple parrots who would do the ritual better than some of our officers, because they don't have time. They don't have a chance to establish the repetition and the momentum. And something like Zoom would actually help us do that. Now, last but not least, I'll say we're prohibited from doing that, not on the basis of anything that's in the code. The code doesn't say we can't do this. Somebody has interpreted the code. And the interpretation, I think, in the most friendly manner can be interpreted as, because I said so. That will not fly. We have a lot of things in our code that frankly are, useless rules. If the rule doesn't help me be a better man, I'm not interested in it. And if you read the code in that context, there's a lot that I'm not interested in. But this is an interpretation of something that's not in the code. And the only answer I get is because I said so. They didn't say because I said so, but that's the only thing I can take from it. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable. We're thinking men. We want to be better. I can make the lodge meetings a whole lot better. I can actually accomplish the meaning of the ritual if we have a chance to practice. I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Michael, stop it. Michael's making fun of Larry Foley because Larry's got his phone or his laptop, whatever it is, automatically zooms in and out. So Michael will start doing that too. So
Well, I've been changing the car schedule. Everybody else is talking. I hope that's okay.
Jim Hamlin.
Three things. One, I wonder if this type conversation went on when we were going from strictly mouth to ear to having a cipher. Were there the same objections? Second, this type of platform, we miss so much of what Masonry is. It's not just the words. There's value in our ritual, and it's not just the words. The floor work, it was mentioned earlier, the purging of the lodge, that means something, and there is a purpose to do it. And so having two virtual deacons collecting a password, that doesn't accomplish what our ritual means. So I think going strictly virtual meetings would be such a failure of the fraternity. That being said, yes, it is all tools need to be used for what they're best at. And so for give and take on learning the ritual, learning what the cipher says, discussing the meaning of the words in our ritual. This is a great forum for doing that. So that's my point.
Got to leave you now. Thank you for letting me join you. Have a good one.
All right, Brian, thanks for coming.
Bye-bye.
Duncan. Oh, hold on. There you go.
Yeah, I think I'm muted now.
Yep, you're good.
Okay, we're having the same discussions up here in BC. We're not having the same problems that you're having down there. Eureka Lodge and the other lodges in our district, we are starting to thrive with candidates. We have in Eureka Lodge alone, we're having problems now initiating. We're waiting at the door because we haven't had meetings in the last while. We have four people right at the present time to come and get their initiation. And in the last 4 years, we've we haven't lost any members. We're getting young members coming knocking the door. Appears that, young members bring in young members. And our lodge does very good ritual, and we have a good young director of ceremonies, and they actually enjoy to come and practice their ritual and floor work. And they at least have one practice or maybe two in a month. So they're just like a machine really right now. But we are having discussions, the same as you people are, on what we can do and what we can't do on these virtual meetings. And I've attended probably about 8 or 9 board meetings now in the last short while, and it's working out very well. And the young people are coming there, but they still like to come to the meetings. They miss actually coming and sitting down and having that social hour after, or 2 hours, and get to really know each other, which I don't think you can really get to know each other all the time on these virtual meetings. But anyways, it's interesting to have these talks. In our lodge, we got these talks going on about once a week now. So I think it is a good thing. And I'm going to leave you with that. And I'd like to bring fraternal greetings and from all the people up here in District 23. And I hope I get invited again to come on and have a chat with you, brethren down south. And I hope we can come and meet at a lodge hall in the very near future.
Absolutely. You're welcome anytime. Every Thursday night, you can use that same link.
Okay, then. I'll pass the information on to some of the brethren up here.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
And to Jim's point, maybe opening and closing of a stated meeting isn't the place for Zoom. I could see having the Zoom start after opening and letting them be part of the business meeting and the education or whatever, if that's what they want. But maybe opening and closing isn't the place for virtual. When we're talking about having, and Michael, I got you next, so just so you know, and we're talking about having one-on-one instruction, or 3 guys working on their ritual parts, or to me that's different than if you have a virtual meeting like this where you've got 30 or 40 people that show up. If you've got 3 guys and you're working on your ritual, you can be pretty sure that those 3 guys are going to be in a secure place. So, I hadn't really thought about it that way, Jim, and I appreciate your comments. And I can tell you that over the next 4 years, I plan on having a lot of conversations about this. And I'm not taking 4 years, John Gebhardt, to get to a decision, but there's going to be a lot of discussions about it. I'll tell you that. Michael.
Yes. This is part in response to Jim Harlan and what he mentioned. As far as being at a meeting is definitely more enjoyable than lack of a better word, than doing this. But yeah, I mean, this is this is still a great way. I see this more as Masonic education, these meetings, which is actually something that's very lacking in lodge. I mean, I haven't been to too many lodges. Not even my own lodge does Masonic education like this. Masonic education comes outside of the lodge building. But I think once again, we have to go back to, we have to create the lodge room. You think about it, operative Masons evolved somewhat into speculative Masons. And now speculative is going to have to evolve into virtual. And so we have to create a virtual lodge room in order to get these things done. Now we could just, I had the word in my head a second ago. Well, we have to change our wording. Instead of using the words that we use in lodge, let's use metaphors to some of the words that we use in Lodge, and create a system of I would say a structure to use in having a virtual meeting. Of course, we wouldn't do the same things we do in a physical lodge. We'd have to create something. And so what does that entail? And I think this is what has to be looked at in order to really truly make this a great tool for Freemasonry. But I think a virtual lodge is such a beautiful idea, because I'm getting more education in this type of meeting than I actually do in my lodge, just to go into a regular lodge meeting. Lodge meeting is usually just business. You know, we do our opening, we do our closing. I mean, our closing charge is not a secret. That could be the foundation of what we use for a virtual lodge. And so the things that we do in this virtual lodge, we can take back out there into the rest of the world. But once again, like I said, it's the spirit of Freemasonry that's going to propel us further in our endeavors. This new way of communicating, this new way of meeting, the spirit of it all. I'm a spiritual person, so I'm into the spirit of Freemasonry. And so that's all I got.
And I think, Michael, you know, it's interesting you talk about not having education in your lodge. And it wasn't that long ago that the lodges in District 8, you go to the lodges in District 8 and it was just a business meeting, pay the bills. But one lodge started doing education during their meetings, and then another lodge, and then another lodge. Of the 10 lodges in District 8, I believe there's at least 6 of them that get through the business as fast as they can, and then they go into an education program or shrink the lodge or something. So again, that gets back to what I said earlier, where I do think we're turning the corner. It's, you know, it may be, I'm not going to say it's too late, because it's never too late, but I think we are turning that corner. I think we're going to make progress.
And if I can say something, during my year as worshipful master, I had a very challenging time. And you said, you know what? The one thing I am going to do is I'm going to have a Masonic education every meeting I attend. I said, because if I can't get them to physically go out into the community, I'm going to educate them on the things that they already know, or they supposedly know. And so that was my fallback, was to educate. And I'm far much more education than I receive in my lodge.
It's funny, because my first time going through as master, you know, when you ask a question, first thing they always tell you is like, well, it's your will and pleasure, worshipful master. And I hated that, because I asked a question because I wanted a response. And so then I decided there were some things that I wanted to do differently, and I started changing things. And I had those same guys that were telling me, well, it's your will and pleasure, worshipful master, telling me that, well, that's not the way we do things. It's like, well, that's the way we're going to do it this year. And so, you know, you have to force those changes sometimes. And, you know, that's not the way we do it. It's like, well, how's that working out for you? Larry.
Yeah, we've had many of these technology discussions in District 8, as Steve mentioned earlier. And many of the brothers are all for it, in a limited use or full lodge meetings. To use as practice, as what was it, John mentioned earlier, so brothers can meet and they can practice their ritual and stuff. And granted, you can get the spirit of Masonry through the technology, but we must not forget that a big part of what makes us Masons and what makes us brothers, and really cements the sense of brotherly love and friendship, is meeting at the lodge. Many years ago, Steve and I used to meet at Monroe Lodge every Thursday. We practice ritual up and down. And granted, we could have done that over here, but what really made it special is that in Monroe, we have stained glass behind each of the 3 principal stations of the sun rising in the east, et cetera, et cetera. And so as you're going through a lot of the ritual, you're sitting here looking at a direct representation of what it is you're trying to memorize. So you're not just memorizing the words, you're learning it in your heart. This discussion does warrant further discussions on how we can make this technology use, but we must not forget that, our brotherly love and friendship comes from actually meeting one another, breaking bread with one another. I think the true lessons of masonry have to be done within a lodge type setting, so you can truly have the ambience, perhaps, if that's not the right word, but just so you can have that whole experience. That way you're able to meet with some of the older brothers who have been around. We've heard a lot of our 40 and younger brothers talk about how they want to be like Grandpa. Well, this is where Grandpa met. This is where Grandpa sat. This is Grandpa's gavel when he was in the East. You don't quite get that through technology, but the technology can still get through a lot of our messages. But our ritual and stuff, ultimately, that needs to be at lodge until, the future says we can't meet anymore.
Well,
Thank you.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that this platform should replace face-to-face. It should enhance it.
Yes.
We should be able to use this as a tool to enhance what we do when we're together. Jim Hamlin.
Michael, your point is so well taken, and this has been what has caused, in my opinion, the downturn of the fraternity in membership. Our ritual should be, our opening and closing, our lectures are to set the mindset so we're open to Masonic education. Instead, we have filled, after the flag ceremony, we fill it with business. Well, this is the platform for business. Do your committee meetings, determine what's going to be for dinner on Zoom, not at your stated meeting. Yeah, we've got to pay the bills and some other business during our meetings. But at most, that's 5 minutes. Take the rest of it for Masonic education, because we're there. That's what we're there for. We're there, and our opening ritual should be to put us, to make us receptive for what's to follow. So come over and visit Everett 137, Michael.
Just jump onto what Brother Jim just said. I know I'm probably not next in line, but and yes, Brother Jim, that's what the opening ritual should be. And instead, what the opening ritual is a chance for everybody to sit around and listen for the words that somebody might miss.
Yeah.
Really? Thank you. I feel like a better man.
Well, and I've said before, and John, just so you know, there was nobody else in line, so that was perfect timing. I've said before that when we get a new candidate or we initiate a new Mason, and we talk to them about how they've got to do all this memory work in order to prove up to the next degree, and then we'll make them a fellow craft, and then they got to do a bunch of memory work. We'll make them a master Mason, and then we go to close lodge and we can't do it. And what does that say to the new initiate? That tells the new initiate, hey, this isn't that important. Why do I have to learn how to do all this stuff?
They have a solution for that. The whole thing is upside down. You don't get to see the clear text until you're a district deputy. I think we ought to give the clear text to the entered apprentices and only let the district deputies have the cipher. And that way, by the time you're a district deputy, you'll know what these words are supposed to say.
And we've talked about that as well. Not that exactly, but the clear text versus the cipher. And for me personally, I prefer the cipher because it makes me focus more on the words, and it makes it easier for me to memorize the ritual when I have to really think about the cipher. If I just have the clear text, I don't memorize stuff when I just read it. That's me personally, but that's, I don't like the clear text.
Well, now we're kind of getting into a different topic, but the fact of the matter is that just as we see, if you talk to 10 millennials and they say, how do I get a hold of you? You're going to get 10 different responses.
Yep.
And one of them might be call me. One of them is going to be, text me and see if I can come to the phone. Somebody's going to say, send me an email. And there's all kinds of different variations here. But I guess the point is, not only do millennials communicate differently, they all learn very differently.
Right.
And to try to, so I guess that means that there's going to be a large percentage of our new candidates, looking forward, for which we're going to be trying to put, square pegs in the round holes. And, I don't know if that makes sense. It used to be that everybody learned in kind of paramilitary style. Learn these times tables or I'm going to spank you. That's pretty much how I learned. And it doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah, my son is 28, and so I think that's a millennial.
Yeah.
And I can call him on the phone, and it will ring and ring and ring and ring and go to voicemail. I will text him on that exact same phone, and he will answer in 5 seconds. So anybody else got anything now that Ed's back,
Yeah.
So Right Worshipful Brother Ed, I've got this all recording, and I would recommend that you listen to it at some point, because there's been a lot of really good conversation.
I really want to apologize to everybody. I had a meeting with Right Worshipful Brother Clint that was scheduled for tonight regarding Grand Lodge and some planning along with that and how we're going to vote and do some other things. But I did want to, if you don't mind, if now's not a bad time, I can maybe share just a couple of my thoughts.
Yeah, no, now's a good time.
Yeah, I think the use of Zoom or whatever technology in the future is not out of the question. I think right now, the reason there's so much apprehension against, for example, doing esoteric work, opening lodge, is because if you've watched the media, Zoom has been hacked. People have been compromising those meetings. I can cite a number of things for some of the things. I was taking some notes as I was listening earlier. And there's a counter to everything, right? So, I mean, for everything that I could give a reason for why we shouldn't do it, somebody could probably give 3 reasons for why we should. And I think until we've had really good conversations around that, we will eventually, I think, get to a point where we will incorporate Zoom into the future of Freemasonry. But right now, I think we have to be calculated with it. I think Zoom has an appropriate place. So, for example, doing 6-step stuff, I think doing education stuff with a new candidate's not entirely out of the question. Just remember your obligation at this point, because a lot of the large reasons behind that no answer right now is because, one, there's really nothing in the code that gives an allowance for it, and probably the most important thing, at least at this point, is the Grandmaster said no. So but I do feel we will get there. I feel that we've got brothers that are on the Grand Line that embrace this. I know Right Worshipful Brother Cameron embraces Zoom, which is really funny, because I think about a year ago, if you'd have tried to talk to him about this, you'd have gotten a completely different answer. But I think for all of us having had to been thrown to the fire with this, we've been forced to embrace it. I've said this before in other Zoom meetings. These kind of meetings and the use of this kind of technology is not new. The Shrine's been doing it for many years. Scottish Rite's been using video and incorporating it on websites and at their events for many years. Masonry, for whatever reason, has always been, no, we're not going to do that. And probably for many of the reasons that have been talked about tonight, with not doing the esoteric work and those type issues, people have been kind of against that. But now that we're in this pandemic, and it's really the only thing that we have right now that allows us to enjoy our fellowship, I think it's got people thinking, and many people that probably were opposed to something like this in the past have probably changed their thought process on it. So I'm going to say it's probably not out of the question, right? Some of the issues I just want to touch on real quick. So recordings, right? Washington State is a 2-party consent state. which means if you have one person in this meeting that objects to it being recorded, you cannot record it legally. 2, where does that recording go? That's always been my question. Where does the recording go and who owns it? And how secure is the place that you have it stored? Because if it's vulnerable to being hacked, which I got to tell you, whether it's your cell phone, your computer, everything that is wired and available through connection from the outside of your home, unless it's air gapped, is going to be susceptible to being hacked and compromised. Okay. I think those are just the main things I wrote down. I'm sure you guys had, many more, points to bring up. And as Steve suggests, I'll be more than happy to watch the video, the recording of this, so that I can hear what everybody else's thoughts were and what the other concerns were or whatnot, so that we can have these conversations. And I think we should have more of these conversations. So with that, I'll end right here.
And Ed, not to put you on the spot, but one of the questions that we had, one of the things that we talked about was working on ritual. Like, say you've got the master and the wardens and they want to practice on their opening, or to me that's a little bit different than a Zoom meeting like this, where you have all kinds of, you have 30 or 40 guys coming in. You've got 3 guys getting together and making sure that they're in a place of security, making sure that, they're doing everything right, and you trust those brothers to be doing the right thing. What's your opinion on that?
I think we'll have to get there at some
Right.
point. I'm not going to dismiss technology. It's here, right?
Right.
But there's other platforms that are more secure. There's proprietary things that Grand Lodge, for example, maybe in the future Grand Lodge purchases something that's more secure, has the proper encryption and will allow us that level of comfort in knowing that when we have 3 brothers having a conversation about esoteric work, we can do so. Look, I get it. When I first became a Mason, I went to the bookstore because I was trying to find every dang book I could get my hands on that had to do with Masonry, right? And I found a little book, Duncan's Ritual, little small book. Many of you probably know what it is. And I about fell out of the damn chair when I opened that thing up and read it. I mean, it's right there in the bookstore. It's out there. But that in my mind does not give us the go-ahead and to use that as the excuse for, hey, it's already out there, let's go ahead and do this. We all took an obligation. And I think the trick here is figuring out how do we apply the use of technology like Zoom or meeting stuff like this and still keep it within the obligation and promise that we made with Mason. And especially with things like recording things, right? I mean, we all took that obligation. Print, paint, stamp, you know what I mean? And
Right.
while there's nothing in that obligation talks about digital recording of, I think we could all agree that it means the same thing. And so I think the discussion for the future is how do we make those things secure to where we can, and then change the code and the things that we need to change to make this a reality in the future. I think we'd be foolhardy not to consider it.
And I did say earlier that, there's probably going to be a lot of these conversations going on for the next 3 or 4 years. So anybody else?
Yeah, Levin.
Okay, Dale.
Yeah, I'm trying to get on.
Oh, sorry.
I think the first thing that has to be done, if the Zoom is going to be continued and in the future, the guidelines have to come from the Grand Lodge because they are our authority. And I think they would probably set up a committee or something and come up with what is going to be legal and useful. The other thing is we've been forced into this by the COVID-19. This is really hard to get used to in a way. But I think we're learning something right now that our lodges can come together where the lines are not drawn, where districts can come together and talk. And there's a lot of knowledge there too. Then the other thing is the thing that's bad about the Zoom is the one-on-one fellowship that we have as a lodge. I really miss getting out there and shaking hands with all the guys and having dinner, sitting down and having dinner and that. So with Zoom, you don't have that. But when we get into a better situation, I think at that time, we'll meld Zoom and our meetings or even committee meetings is what it's really good for, I think, right now. Then the other thing is I've noticed that I've been coming to these Thursday night meetings. We normally get to about 22 people, and it's the same people usually. So are we preaching to preachers? You know, I'm not aware if I can invite people by giving them the number or what, because there's a lot of young guys that probably would benefit from just coming in and hearing some of this stuff and meeting the people from around the state and our Grand Masters that have been on here. And it's really a great medium.
And I don't have any issues with that being shared, the link to get in. My only request is that it not be shared on like social media or websites or, a place where who knows who's going to get a hold of it. But if you have somebody that a Brother Mason or a potential candidate that you think would be, would enjoy this, invite them on.
Yeah. And absolutely. And this venue is probably perfect for education. When I'm sitting in lodge, I'm hard of hearing. I can't hear very well, but on this thing, I've got the visuals right in front of me. I can hear the speaker really well, and I can also hear the other people because we come on in a orderly manner, thanks to our host. So, anyway, that's my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Dale. Ed?
I just wanted to address a couple of things that Dale had said. First thing, and this is something that when I hear it, I always want to remind the brothers. We are Grand Lodge. If you're a past master sitting here, you are part of Grand Lodge. We are all empowered to change the code. I'm going to say almost pretty much to whatever we want to. I mean, if you think about it, if you can convince the brethren to vote on it and it's legal change and it passes jurisprudence and all that other good stuff, keep in mind we can affect change in our fraternity. Okay, don't ever forget that. The second thing I want to say is that I think Dale's spot on. This is a perfect opportunity for that guy who's interested in masonry. I guess I'm going to ask this question. I already know the answer. Was anything discussed tonight that we couldn't discuss with a non-Mason?
Nope.
No.
So there's the answer, right?
Yeah.
So in this setting here and with this gathering, I think it's absolutely, to share it with other brothers that might be interested, and or even if you have somebody who might be interested in masonry. You never know what kind of insight that a non-Mason might bring to this discussion coming in, and it may give us the insight we need to make those adjustments that we need to hold on to our members.
And I've been sharing it out more with people outside of District 8 as it's kind of, I wasn't really sure how it was going to go over when we started, so I was keeping it to District 8, but now I sent it out to all the deputies. I sent it out to the Grand Lodge team, and anybody that wants to join can join. Gene.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that, Steve. Thank you for letting this leak out to District 7. John Gebhardt sent it out to some of us last night, and it's a great thing. I jumped at the chance to be able to join in even though I haven't said anything tonight, which I know you know is unusual.
I thought maybe you were ill.
I'm very, very hopeful that we'll, as a fraternity, at least in Washington, take the opportunity to advance the way that we communicate and the way that we meet. Not really saying anything that a number of other people haven't already said, but to be able to have a meeting and allow a brother who is in Texas or in Florida or in New York attend the meeting, that gets him more connected. The new guys, they want to be there in person, really, because they're joining because they want to be able to meet other men of good character and learn from them. And we won't lose that if we're able to figure out a way to allow people to attend online.
Agreed. So with that, anybody else? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. It's been a great conversation. I look forward to next week. We will have Very Worshipful Brother Jim Hamlin will be presenting for us next week. Do you have a topic yet, Jim?
Yes, I am going to give my take on a point within a circle.
Excellent. And the week after that will be Most Worshipful Brother Sam Roberts talking about leadership and mentorship. And then the first week in June, we will have a special guest, Most Worshipful Brother Russ, and I don't know if I pronounced it right, Chavornia, the past Grand Master of California, will be on talking about civility in the times of the pandemic. So we have some pretty good things coming up, and look forward to it. Again, spread the word, share it out with people that you know are Masons or interested in Masonry. Have them come to our Thursday night meetings. Originally, I had decided that I was going to drop this down to 2 meetings a month starting in June. I got some pushback, so we're going to do it every week. I'm not going down to 2 a month. So again, thank you all very much. And with that, have a good night.